Hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The Centre has issued a notification to bring the Goods and Services Tax Network under the ambit of the Anti-Money Laundering Law. The move mandates that the GST network would have to share information with the Enforcement Directorate and Financial Intelligence Unit under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The move will give the probe agencies more teeth in their crackdown on GST frauds. We will be discussing the ramifications of the move with our guests. But before that, let's go across to our colleague Sapna Das on what the government notification which came in on Saturday night implies.
But clearly here the aim is, enabling the financial, the FIU basically, in terms of sharing details or information on suspicious transactions with the GSTN so that the GST authorities can, take action accordingly. And this would basically help them in curbing fake registrations or even fake IDC for that matter. There's a big campaign that has been underway and all kinds of details are there, of how much, what has been the impact of the crackdown. So, simply speaking, this basically enhances your information gathering and, the penal actions that follow post that, helps the government in better investigation. But having said that, if you look at the pace at which the ambit of the PMLA has expanded in just 8 months, November 2022 onwards, you had Competition Commission coming under PMLA, you have had DGFT under PMLA, IRD under PMLA, State Police under PMLA, Ministry of External Affairs under PMLA, CAs and CSs under PMLA, and now there's also talk of bringing the legal fraternity under PMLA, making them accountable, and so that, sharing of information, calling for data is possible. So, and in comparison, if you look at the conviction rate under PMLA, it has been quite abysmal. So the question here also arises that, yes, sharing of information and data is extremely good and maybe even necessary for the government, but is it a deterrence or does it translate into harassment? That's the whole point right now.
All right, let's go across to Nagendra Kumar, former member GST and Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Satyendra Singh, Enforcement Directorate, former Deputy Director, and Shailesh Haribhakti, Chairman of Shailesh Haribhakti Associates with us as well. Mr. Nagendra Kumar, if I can begin with you, do you feel that the current GST law did not have enough teeth to detect frauds in forex transactions? Was this move really needed?
Thank you for inviting me to this session. So far as the GST laws are concerned, they are quite self-contained in dealing with the fake invoice menace in terms of not only arresting the persons who are found to be generating fake invoices and thereby creating a false money trail, but also to prosecute them under this GST law. The notification now issued under Section 66, subsection 1, subclass 2, under the PMLA Act is basically to provide a platform for the Enforcement Directorate, or for that matter, the Financial Intelligence Unit coming under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, to share the information what the Information Enforcement Directorate has in its custody to the GSTN for further trailing the GST offense.
Right. We have seen, Mr. Haribhakti, the scope of the PMLA law being increased since November. More than 15 to 17 entities, chartered accountants, company secretaries, limited liability partnerships, they've all been included. The RBI, the IRDAI, the Ministry of External Affairs, DGFT, all of them are mandated to share information with the Enforcement Directorate. How do you see GSTN also being included under PMLA?
I think it's part of a pattern which is emerging. India started the GST as a born digital law, which it has always been, and it has been an evolutionary law, which has kind of improved and changed and metamorphosized through consensus. Almost every state participates in the GST Council, and that's how decisions are made. Now what they are bringing in is what I like to call information exchange. And because everything is so digital, there is the gathering of important information which is happening in different parts of the ecosystem. What this provision seems to be doing is bringing all of that onto one platform in order that instantaneously the revenue authorities can track and trace what wrongs are being done. Fake invoices, wrong IST credit obtaining, any other malfeasance that is attempted will get detected faster. Now, if on detection, the malpractice is curbed and the action stops at making sure that the tax which has been sort of taken away from the system is restituted, that would be very positive outcome. But the important thing that everybody has been put on notice is that there is no place to hide. Information and your footprint is going to be visible, and that footprint is going to be shared, and it's going to be multiplexed using artificial intelligence and data gathering mechanisms which are available to the private sector. No reason it should not be available to the government sector. And that's the context in which I see all of these extensions. And it's a question of making sure that people ultimately realize that you have to come clean and you must make sure that compliance is as full and as accurate as possible. That's the way I look at this whole evolution and this spread.
Okay. Mr. Satyendra Singh, former Deputy Director at ED. Mr. Singh, at what stage will the Enforcement Directorate come in when it comes to fake invoices, fake input tax credits? Also, when we look at PMLA law and the statistics since 2005, when it came into effect, there are over 5,000 cases that were registered, but the trial was only completed in 25 odd cases. So how will this really help the ecosystem, and what role will ED play in investigations?
परीक्षित जी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपका, आपने मुझे यहाँ बुलाया। सबसे पहले मैं ये आपको बताना चाहूंगा कि ये जो सवाल बार बार उठता है कि कन्विक्शन रेट ईडी का बहुत पुअर है, ये एकदम गलत है। देखिए, आप बात करते हैं कितने केसेस रजिस्टर किए गए, कितने इन्वेस्टिगेशन स्टार्ट किए गए, या कितने प्रोसिक्यूशन फाइल किए। जो ईडी जब प्रोसिक्यूशन फाइल कर देती है, उसके बाद ईडी का उस पर कोई कंट्रोल नहीं है। हमारा जो लीगल सिस्टम है, ये सब उसकी जो पेश बनती है, वहां की जो लूप होल्स हैं या जो कमियां हैं या अच्छाइयां हैं, उस पर सब डिपेंड करता है। तो ये जो बात हो रही सिर्फ 25 केसेज में डिसीजन हुआ है, ऐसा नहीं है। अभी आई थिंक मोर देन 35 केसेज में ऑर्डर हो चुके हैं। और यदि आप कन्विक्शन रेट की बात करें तो आप ये देखिए कि एक्विट कितने लोग केसेज में लोग हुए हैं। यदि आप कन्विक्शन की बात करेंगे 35 केसेज में, तो आप देखेंगे कि अबाउट 92% कन्विक्शन रेट है ईडी का, बहुत कम लोग एक्विट हुए हैं। तो ये जो मिसकंसेप्शन है कि ईडी का कन्विक्शन रेट बहुत कम है, कोई कहता है 2% है, कोई कहता है 0.1% है, वो एकदम गलत है। ईडी का कन्विक्शन रेट मोर देन 90% है, वन ऑफ द बेस्ट इन कंपेरिजन टू अदर एजेंसीज। फर्स्ट है। सेकंड, आप जो ये कह रहे हैं कि ये जो नया चेंज है, ये ईडी को या इकोसिस्टम को कैसे हेल्प करेगा। देखिए, जीएसटी में बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है, रेगुलर लोग पकड़े जा रहे हैं, जैसा कि को-पैनलिस्ट ने बताया, कन्विक्शंस हो रहे हैं, ये बहुत अच्छा है। लेकिन जब और इधर ईडी भी पैरेलल कुछ दूसरे इन्वेस्टिगेशन करती है, जब पीएमएलए में, मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग में, जिनमें नजर आता है कि फेक कंपनी, सेल्फ कंपनी यूज की जा रही है, सेम कंपनी भी जीएसटी फ्रॉड में भी यूज होती। तो जब ये इंफॉर्मेशन एक्सचेंज होगी तो दोनों एजेंसीज को फायदा मिलेगा, और सबसे ज्यादा परेशानी उन लोगों को होगी जो कि इवेजन कर रहे हैं। आप बड़े बड़े केसेस में देखें कि जब ईडी की इन्वेस्टिगेशन आती है, जैसे भूषण स्टील का केस है, तो उसमें भी जीएसटी फ्रॉड नजर आ जाता है। और ईडी की एंट्री की जहां तक बात है, तो ईडी की एंट्री वहां हो जिसके जीएसटी में पकड़ लिया गया आदमी को, उससे टैक्स भी रिकवर कर लिया गया, लेकिन उसने जो इलीगल मनी अर्न किया उसको वो एंजॉय कर रहा है किसी दूसरे तरीके से, कई कंपनियों में वो शिफ्ट हो रहा है, तो उसको अटैच ईडी करेगी। उस मनी ट्रेल को जो है वो ईडी एस्टेब्लिश कर, तो यहां जाके ये इस पूरे सिस्टम को हेल्प मिलेगी।
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Nagendra Kumar, if I can come back to you, what is the kind of information that the GST authorities will now be sharing or mandated to share with the Enforcement Directorate, the Financial Intelligence Unit as well? And will this mean that all cases of fake input tax credit, GST, fake invoices, all of that will be investigated by the Enforcement Directorate? Or will it be only those cases which are handed over by the GST authorities to the ED?
Yeah, I just want to make it one point very clear that today an offence recognized or acknowledged under the GST Act is not a predicate offence. A predicate offence is one offence where necessarily a police has filed an FIR and an investigation is conducted. And one of those specified scheduled offences listed under the PMLA Act, like one on IPC, or it could be probably, I think, with regard to the Customs Act, etc., etc. The GST Act, an offence under GST Act is not a predicate offence per se, but the GST offence could also involve an offence under the IPC in form of a criminal conspiracy, or identity theft, or a fraud, etc., etc. So parallelly, if an investigation is carried out by ED in any one of those GST offences involving a predicate offence as prescribed in the IPC or any other law listed in that schedule, in that act, ED can investigate on this. Now, coming to the question as to what is the additional things which the GST authorities will have in relation to this notification issued, I must tell you this, that the GSTN, the Goods and Services Tax Network, which has got a repository of the data of the taxpayers, including the registration, the return filing, the payment, etc., would have the advantage of the data which is flowing from the ED to the GSTN, insofar as the offences investigated in the ED under the PMLA Act is concerned. This will not only facilitate in recovering the tax quickly from the fraudsters in terms of identifying the money trail, but also facilitate in easy prosecution, etc. But the advantage that will accrue to the Enforcement Directorate is always there. The GSTN is sharing the data with the FIU and also sharing the data with other sister agencies like CBDT, or for that matter, the enforcement wing, etc., through a memorandum of understanding. This data is being shared already. But what now the current notification, which has been issued on 7th July, facilitates the Enforcement Directorate to share the information to the GSTN, in whose hand the information shared will strengthen in fastening the evidence and tightening the investigation, and also investigating the case under GST more effectively. And I also agree with my co-panelists that the information sharing happening between the ED and the GSTN would strengthen the investigation not only in the hands of the GSTN providing the data to the state and the central GST authorities, but also the information which is available in the GSTN data would also help ED to investigate the case more effectively and trailing the proceeds of the crime and also attaching it and taking further action under the PMLA.
Right. That's an important point, Mr. Kumar, how GST authorities hope that information sharing will strengthen investigations in cases of GST frauds. But Mr. Haribhakti, do you also feel there needs to be some checks and balances as well over the last several months when this drive against fake GST invoices, fake input tax credit was on? Many e-commerce companies, many internet retailers have been writing to GST authorities, the finance ministry, about cases where there are virtual offices, about them being penalized, about them being hauled up. Do you feel there needs to be some checks and balances in place, certain clarifications that are needed?
Absolutely. I think that is the evolutionary process which I was speaking about a little while ago. The idea for all of us, and we are all in this together, we want to make sure that the fair taxes are paid. We want to make sure that GST becomes the self-policing, pull factor kind of law that it was meant to be. And we want to make sure that the honesty of reporting and uploading and making sure that all the obligations are met is done with a responsible manner by citizens. Where there is any hint of wrongdoing or fraud, it has to come to light as fast as possible. But where there is an interpretational issue, I think it is important to make sure that a chance is given to make sure that the fair representation on what the true issues are is a chance should be given to the SSC. If that is put in place, that might mitigate all the angst that seems to be growing and all the press comments that we are hearing about this whole thing being moved to the level of harassment. I don't think that it necessarily should lead to harassment. It should lead to more quick identification of things that are going wrong. And it should serve as a warning to the people who are subject to the GST that they must fulfill their obligations in an honest manner. It's now become a clearer, simpler, more easy to comply with law. And with the information exchange that is all pervasive, there is no place to hide.
All right, we've run out of time, but Mr. Nagendra, Kumar, Shailesh, Haribhakti, and Mr. Satyendra Singh, thank you very much for joining us on the program, giving us your view of the changes to the PMLA law and the addition of GSTN to the list of entities which will be mandated to report data on frauds to the Enforcement Directorate and vice versa. We're going to take a short break, but coming up on the other side, Hyundai forays into the entry-level SUV segment with the Exter micro SUV. Details in just a bit. Don't go anywhere.